signed up, and I think many more coming on board. So welcome everyone. Uh, what a difficult last few weeks it's been, I think, for all of us. We've all gone through a roller coaster of emotions, I think, in these few weeks, from fear to panic, stress, grief, I think a feeling of just being overwhelmed, helplessness, and occasionally hope. Welcome to this important session. We've titled it, You Are Not Alone, Building Resilience in Times of Fear and Helplessness. I wanted to introduce our speaker for today's session, Dr. Arvinder Singh. Arvinder is a psychologist and a psychotherapist. He's a consultant to the UN and a trainer. She's currently the founder director of Ashoka Centre for Wellbeing at Ashoka University, and also a guest faculty at IIM-Ahmedabad. As a mental health practitioner who's been educated and trained both in India and the UK, her mission is to bring the best mental health practices to India and promote a narrative of well-being. Her work spans over 25 years and ranges from private practice as a psychotherapist to corporate training. She works on building healing spaces through listening and sharing stories. She is also the founder of an initiative called Listening Circles and Healing Spaces that builds on this aspect of her work. For the session, we want this to be as interactive as we can. So please, as Arvinder starts her talk, please keep popping in your questions on the chat. You can either send it to me privately, I'll moderate, or you can put it for everybody. And we'll try and cover all Q&A as we go along. Arvinder, warm welcome. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Shiv, for this opportunity to speak to so many people who have their heart in the right place. So when I was approached by Rachna and Shiv to sort of talk to you all, I was quite impressed by the fact that here is an organization which is at least acknowledging that something is happening, because what is happening is that even though a lot of people, a lot of organizations are saying there are openings for people, there are people who are sort of connecting with some spaces, but by the end of the day, everybody is really looking at the output. So even when there is, only when there is something really grave, and by which I am by no means suggesting that there's no empathy in the organizations, but what I'm trying to point out is that the stress levels are so high. And the emotions that she pointed out, yeah, we go way beyond that. The last year was the year of grief, and this year is the year of this protracted, continued uncertainty. Not really knowing when this is ending. I mean, the last year, yes, people were worried about the economy and what was happening, and this year there is palpable fear. There is not one person who in this huge gathering that you all have, I'm pretty sure there's not even one person who has not heard of someone in the neighborhood, as their colleague or ex-colleague or somebody or the other who's not lost their loved ones. So just look at the kind of fear that it instills in each one of us. Look at what it does to each one of us in terms of living on the edge, living on tenterhooks. And it's really not, it's just not exciting any longer. Whereas the last year, the pandemic had these whole emotions of let's try something new, let's do something. We were learning new things. There were hobbies, there were languages, people were cooking, trying to multitask. But I think now, more than the burnout of pandemic, people are talking about pandemic, and I'm saying it's not just the burnout, it's just the protracted uncertainty. The sense of a deep sense of loss not just of the loved ones, but a loss of sense of control, a loss of sense of faith, a loss in humanity, in probably God, in, the medical sciences. We really don't know, because every day a new thing is being popped up. As if wave 1 and 2 weren't enough. There's already a talk of the wave 3. So can you see what it does to people? It's just that kind of, that blah, that meh kind of feeling, which does not probably have a name. And a lot of people are now talking about, look, I'm not depressed, okay? But I'm not my full potential. I'm doing things, but it's as if there's a fog on my brain. And I have a lot of people talking about that. And that's a very real thing. It's not imaginary, and it can't be just kicked out of our heads because it's not there. It's around us. Look at it. You will hear in your child's voice when you ask them, how was the online class? Yeah, you will hear it in your spouse's voice when you ask them, how was your day? You will see that the kind of lack of connect that we are feeling with the real people is actually now, this year, showing a lot more on us in terms of what we are going through, the sense of fear, the sense of loss, and so on and so forth. I have a very short kind of like PowerPoint presentation. I definitely actually just like to have a conversation, but that kind of points sort of help me stay on track and not veer into other directions. But do feel free to sort of stop me if you feel you want to understand something more or connect a little bit more with some point. I'm open to that. So I am just going to try and get into this. So as I just sort of said, there are a lot of feelings. It's like anxiety, fear, isolation, grief, anger. I mean, a lot of people don't talk about anger, but there's a lot of anger around, and anger because it's a state of hopelessness and helplessness that we are feeling. And what really pops out from trauma, powerlessness, is the loss of control, the loss of identity, the loss of motivation, something that I'm calling languishing. That mere feeling that not knowing what to do. It actually wouldn't be an exaggeration if we were to call this kind of space as a time of like kind of an existential anguish. Because this isolation, this hopelessness, this actually has gone way beyond anxiety. And it's actually, and also, I mean, in a sense, all of us are like, on a spectrum on anxiety, right? Because tell me a person who's not anxious, and all anxiety is actually not really bad. It also propels us into action. We end up doing some things because there is a deadline, because there is anxiety. But it's just that in times such as this, the anxiety has moved from the mild spectrum to the moderate and severe spectrum. So it's like some of us are like frozen, not knowing what to do. So don't really feel like getting out of bed. Maybe depressed, maybe not, maybe just languishing, Thankfully, there's a name now for this emotion, which is languishing. And even this kind of universal grief, that was there last year and is continuing. And the universality of grief this year in the last few months has actually been very, very heightened. And by the end of it, I hear a lot of people, maybe some of you are also experiencing that, this extreme exhaustion for no real reason. So you may say, I'm not even going to work. I'm not sort of, traveling 25 kilometers to get to work. I'm not doing any of those things that would tire me. Why am I feeling exhausted? I'm oversleeping, but I'm still not able to get up fresh. So all of this actually is exhaustion, a huge sense of exhaustion, which goes way beyond burnout. And this exhaustion is not just physical, but it's also emotional and mental. So when you're feeling all of these gamut of emotions, what we really need actually in these uncertain times, not knowing where it's going, this sense of powerlessness, the biggest thing we need is to feel in control, to feel safe, to feel protected, to feel cared for, to feel connected, to actually be contained, our emotions to be contained, because there's so much that's happening. We are so overwhelmed. I wish there was somebody who could contain, who could actually hear and understand what I'm going through. And for the most part, people don't really need advice. Unfortunately, mostly, or more so in our culture, it's really free and ready to be doled out. Okay, so you sneeze and somebody will tell you 10 things. In fact, I shouldn't take the example of sneeze because it's a bad word now. The cough and sneeze and a runny nose are terrible words right now. So, but if anyone were to do that, there would be 5 suggestions that would come up. And that's not something that we need. We don't need that advice, but we just need to feel like somebody understands, and now I'm not alone, a sense of community. A lot of the time, it's very strange, but grief also sort of bonds us in strange ways. It brings out the compassion that we didn't know existed in us. It also isolates us. It also numbs us sometimes. But what we need the most at this time is to feel productive, is to feel like we have a sense of purpose, and the biggest of it, to feel in control. Because what is this uncertainty doing to us? It's making us feel like we have no control. You don't know, it's in the air. I don't know whether to call it the funniest or more scary. Somebody sent me a news piece today saying, it was of course, backed with research, believe it or not, that the next thing that's happening is that, really hold on to your seats, but farts could be sort of transmitting the virus. Are you kidding me now? I have to be now really scared from these silent bombs that could be happening around me. But really, that kind of lack of control that it sort of spurns gives sense to a kind of a sense of helplessness, hopelessness. And really, to combat that, sometimes we also feel, what's the point? If you really notice the numbers, the research shows, and I hope you don't see too many of those. It does you no good. But the numbers really show that, the depression, the anxiety, the suicide rates are going up. They're going up because people don't have a sense of control. And when you don't have a sense of control, you just feel as if somebody else is leading you. It's like a downward spiral. And that we need to really stop, and we need to feel in control, which is why we're meeting today. So to get into control, let me just jump into it. Like, where do we begin? How do we get into control? I'm pretty sure many of you have heard a lot about, yoga, do this, do that. I am going to take a couple minutes to say, just go back to the basics. Just back to the basics. Have a rhythm to the day. What do I mean by a rhythm to a day? Very simple things like a wake up time and a sleep time. People actually have been sleeping late and something like almost like with a vengeance, because that's the only way you get a sense of freedom, over your time and space, because the whole day is controlled by something else, the outside environment. So have a rhythm to the day, a wake up, a sleep time, some kind of, what do you do? And the rhythm actually and the routine will give you a great sense of purpose. When you get up in the morning and there's a rhythm, there is something, the brain works like that. And our brain we just need to keep firing it in new ways, the neural connections. And the way it works is, when you have a certain sense of, I've got to do this and this and this and that routine, that rhythm gives a certain sense of purpose, a certain sense of control. Whereas I can't control the virus, I definitely can control my day. I can control the fact that I'm getting up on time, I'm having my meals on time. However small it sounds, let me tell you, the first signs and symptoms of any kind of mental health concern are when you're eating, you're sleeping, your routine, your exercise. Whatever basic exercise it is. Maybe you have a lifestyle where you walk a lot, you're up and down, you're taking stairs. When you find any of this is compromised for a period of 10 days to 2 weeks or more, do know that you are on a spectrum. You move from stress to distress and you need help immediately. So the best way to deal with it is to incorporate this whole business of rhythm into your day. The routines and small rituals, rituals of self-care. These rituals can be, carving out that me time that everybody's been talking about, meditating, caring for a pet, cooking, taking short breaks, journaling, seeing a plant grow, exercise, and you may have seen that this is a time when a lot of people have taken to cooking, baking, and gardening, kind of work, or crochet, or some kind of hobbies of creating. So when you create, or when you see a life coming alive, it's a big antidote to stress. So any one of you, if you put that something on the back burner, it's time to bring it forward and say, let me just do that. It might sound like a little bit of a psycho mumbo jumbo to you, but trust me, it works. It works because it just gives you a certain purpose to the day. It aligns your day. It gives a bit of a rhythm. And the other thing that I really want to talk about is the boundaries. So we have routines, we have rituals, we have boundaries. Routines, rituals, and boundaries are a great way to get a sense of control, and a great way to fight that kind of uncertainty that, we don't know how it's crippling us. What do I mean by boundary? By boundary, I mean, very simple things like, right now you all probably are sitting on one desk and you probably sort of do all your roles there, from being a parent to a caregiver to, a manager to a daughter or a son to to just about all your roles. Huh? So you're probably chopping your veggies on that same table where your laptop is and you're working. And some bit of it is, very, it's new. And so, it just sort of, it gives you a sense of, okay, I can multitask. But at another level, this is exhausting you. So one of the reasons why you may be feeling very exhausted, or you may be feeling like, you don't have much to your day, is because you don't have a boundary. So a wake up time, all of you, I'm sure, are responding to emails round the clock. I know I get into that trap. So it's not like it's not happening with me just because I'm here talking to you about what's the right thing to do. But have a journey where you can try and set as many boundaries as you can. Look, we always had boundaries. So they gave us a sense of like anchoring. Huh? The boundary anchors you. It gives you a sense of groundedness. Let me give you a small example. We go to work, we have a certain ritual. You sort of dress up a certain way. You pick your bag, maybe you carry your lunch, maybe, you step out of the house, you drive to work, you're there. So there's a boundary. And when you're turning back to home, your mind automatically goes into the home space. And for the large part, you're able to keep your work away. Right now, when it's the same dining table or the same work table or your bed probably with a little stool on it, whatever it is, that becomes the hub of every role. So it is enmeshing the boundaries and it is making you feel very rudderless or anchorless. As a result, it's that whole sense of that, what we call the toxic productivity, wherein you're cramming too many hours in a day, but actually you're not productive enough. It's not the same. It's not the same as it used to be. So try and set some boundaries, because these boundaries will give you structure. These boundaries will anchor you. These boundaries will give a rhythm to your day and will actually help you get a sense of control, a sense of power, a sense of, I can handle this. Okay, so it's not like a dark abyss. It doesn't feel like a tunnel. It feels like, for today, I really know what to do. So carve out very special physical spaces. Maybe, it doesn't have to be a different room, but make sure that your dining table is meant just for that, and not your work table. You can put a tiny little space. It helps if you carve out a corner. And every single day you go there to work. So your brain switches on and switches off. But if it's in the same space, which is why you will also notice people who work on bed are also having a lot of sleep issues. Guess why? Because, the brain is confused. The bed is supposed to be sleeping in. Yeah, for sleeping in. And so you don't change your clothes. You probably are in the same t-shirt and pajamas. You go to bed, you get up, you start working. And, and the brain is just getting fuzzier and fuzzier because boundaries are fuzzier and fuzzier. That contributes to your exhaustion. So go ahead and set those boundaries. Have a beginning time to the work and end time to the work. Have a little bit of a self-care routine. You will be amazed at how 20 minutes a day can go such a long way in making you feel like you're back in control, like your mojo's back. Yeah. Also, I want to elaborate on this point that, how do we build this hope and resilience? Everybody's talking about it. For all of us to sort of be in the same definition on resilience, I'd just like to say that in very simple words, resilience is the ability to bounce back after adversity. We all have ounce of resilience within us. Okay. But when the times are very trying and when the trauma is protracted and it carries on for long, it just chips into our resilience. And what it does is it just brings us down and we lose the confidence in ourselves that I can do it. You feel I'm not that good now. I'm not as productive as I was. I really had a lot more to myself. I think I can't. And then you push yourself, the way you take care of the uncertainties, you try and push yourself to be more productive because you feel if there is more output, I'm going to feel more in control. And the more you get into that toxic productivity cycle, the more sucked in you are. Yeah, pretty much like a whirlpool, huh? Where the more you try, the more sucked in you are. So let go of the need to be as productive as you were before these pandemic times. Because guess what? It is not the same. Don't even start believing or thinking that the pandemic is over. Oh, it's here to stay. I really need to get my antennae up, and I really need to work, and I really need to be more productive. So the moment you let go of that need, and bear with me for a little bit more to see, because it's not just, okay, so let us just let it be and let's not do anything about it. I'm just getting to the point of what we can do instead. Like I said, we have so many realities. So to build that resilience, integrate your multiple realities. Once again, let me explain. Now, you all are tuned in from home, right? I'm pretty sure you all are working from home. So your home will have a lot of realities. Some of you may be working, you may be home alone at this point. Maybe you're just with your child who's playing around, or maybe you have to answer the doorbell, and many a times, your pressure cooker whistles are going on, and, you're sort of kind of embarrassed and you're constantly muting so that the others don't hear. Sometimes it's like you don't realize, but two people in your house start arguing very loudly and you're in the middle of a meeting. So many of our realities are coming into the workspaces, because guess what? The work and the home space is the same. So just like, and it's challenging what we really believed and thought was very sacred to us. What we thought was very sacred to us was keep your home life separate from your work life. And guess what's happening? That very thing is challenged right now. So instead of trying to keep the two apart, instead of trying to sort of, keep going on mute or shooing your children away, or, just integrate that. Talk about it. So you can just sort of, for example, if your child was walking around, some of you may be having little children and you can't keep them away for so long, just bringing it in, just to say that I'm alone today, and you know what, my little son is going to be around and walking around, and he might just walk in and grab my attention sometime, just so you know. Now, in my work, in my one-on-one practice, I always do that with my client. I never pick the phone. I never look at a message while I'm with them in person. But if there is an important call that has to come, if somebody's traveling, or if I have some concern or something, I always let my client know, look, I'm just letting you know that I might just get this call that I may have to take. And I hope you understand it's emergency and it's in no way disrespectful to you. 100 times my clients appreciate that and say, well, that's fine, right? So if you integrate your multiple reality, what it does is it brings more of you to the place. So your mind space is not preoccupied with, just in case my siblings start fighting, or my children start fighting, or my parents start fighting, or my spouse starts yelling, it's okay. I will tell people that I have people around me, and, we're in a bit of a not that great a space, and it might just trickle in. Doing that, and this does not mean that, you're sharing all those the whatever problems that are going on, but it just totally just means that you're in the space where you just integrate that multiple reality. Because what it does is it builds a sense of collective resilience. It builds a sense of we're not alone. And what these conversations do is they just become more and more meaningful. And what we're really looking for in workspaces is more meaningful conversations. So create this shared vocabulary. Now, I know this is a very large group of all levels of people. And I know that some of you as leaders may be very challenged on, what do I do? I'm very empathetic to what is happening to my team, but I also know that, we need to be productive for the sake of the company. We need to sort of also earn our daily bread, and we need to combine the two things. What I really suggest and work with managers often is what I call the shared vocabulary. It's a vocabulary which is based on trust, on providing psychologically safe spaces, on helping people share what they're going through, on talking about the larger context that is happening in the world, also bringing that into your own lives. Because do remember, what's happening in the microcosm is also showing in your microcosm. What's happening in the world, in the universe, is showing in your home as well. And not just your family or your country or your, whatever, or your organization, but it's all over. So when we connect the dots, we build a language which speaks of empathy, which speaks of trust, which speaks of hope, which speaks of shared grief, which actually builds the collective resilience, because we then build interdependence. We don't come down with a vengeance on productivity. but we stay productive. And there's a difference there, and a very beautiful, subtle but very beautiful difference. So what do we do? How do we build that vocabulary of empathy? Please let people name the feelings, whatever it is, and when you ask someone, how are you? Very genuinely ask them how they are, and be very prepared to hear what they have to say. For your own self, because what we do is we are most ignorant about our own feelings. So try and acknowledge, accept that it's okay. It's okay to feel what you're feeling, because these are extraordinary times. And whatever you're feeling at this time is your mind, body, emotional response to this extraordinary situation that we are facing. So acknowledge there is a feeling that's going on. Accept it's going on. So frame it. Like, what is it? Name it, frame it, distill it, respond to it. And then you'll find your creative responses. So I'm going to take you through this very interesting cycle, what we call the TFA cycle. So we all have thoughts, right? Thoughts are what make us, right? Isn't that what we say? You are what you think. Huh? And very often when people tell you, think positive, don't think negative. It's very annoying. It's very annoying to hear that. Why are you thinking like that? Don't think like that, as if we had any control. Many a times we don't have a direct control on the thoughts. They just keep coming because something has happened that's triggered you. Now, if I were to say, don't be scared of corona, now that's, you probably, thank goodness for this virtual medium. Otherwise, you would have clobbered me by now saying, what do you mean? Don't be scared of corona. Of course, you're going to be scared of corona. Or don't think about corona continuously. If the messages are pouring in, how can I not think about it? It's going to keep coming into my consciousness time and again. And the way you think is the way you're going to feel. So your thoughts are going to control your emotions or your feelings. If you're thinking about the number of deaths that are happening due to corona every day, the feeling will be fear. Okay? And if you're thinking that and you're feeling in a certain way, and the same way, if you're feeling scared, your thoughts will be in that same space. So, which is why if you see the arrows are both directions. Yeah. So thoughts lead to feelings and feelings lead to thoughts. And the way you think and feel leads to the action. Okay. So if taking that same example, if your thoughts are about, you read something and you're saying, what's happening? Too many people are dying every day. I don't think, this is going to end. You're going to feel very scared. You're going to feel very hopeless or helpless. And what is your action? You'll probably, not be productive. You'll probably just go and watch some mindless television, or you'll probably, start acting out of that fear. You'll be preoccupied with safety. You'll probably try to just wipe everything, wash your hands all the time. You'll probably try and do things that, that others may find a bit odd. And then again, because you'll be doing that, for example, if you're wiping the handles of your doors continuously or washing your hands, what's going to happen? Your thoughts are again going to be, my God, have I done enough? Did I touch that? And this goes like a vicious cycle. So when I say you don't have control on your thoughts, and therefore you don't have control on your feelings, not really, not unless you're a psycho or a sociopath, what can we control? We can control the action. Because if we control the action, the thoughts and feelings naturally get controlled. Let me give you another example. So you're feeling a bit blah because, you didn't have a good day at work. Yeah. And your thoughts are about the conversation that you may have had with your colleague, your manager, whatever you want to call it, right? Your thoughts are about the same. Your feelings are, you're not really feeling a great sense of, achievement. You're feeling like, no, this is not working out. Maybe you're also scared that, in this time, if I don't show my output or productivity, I may get laid off. So the feeling of fear is also there. What if you change the action? The normal action could be, you just go sleep it off, or you go and yell at someone. The famous story of, the boss yelled at you, you yelled at your spouse or your house help, the house help yelled, or the spouse yelled at the child kicked the dog, and the dog went and bit someone in the street. So if instead of that, you decided to focus on the action and you said, you know what, let me just go for a run. Or let me, in this day and time, let me go, on my terrace, if you're lucky enough to have a terrace, or in my room, let me just play some, video and just do some yoga, exercise, whatever you want to do. And, you do a little bit of workout or something. very naturally your thoughts will change. That little rush of adrenaline will help your thoughts and your feeling. So what you can do is really name your feelings. When you accept it, then you know what action to take. Seek help, because sometimes, you know what, you may not be able to deal with it. Sharing your emotional burden, is not a bad thing essentially. Vulnerability now is actually a core strength that the leaders possess. So go be vulnerable, not to one and all, not to anyone and everyone, but someone who you trust, someone who can keep whatever you're sharing confidential, if it's very personal to you. But if it's something that you want to share with, in a generic way, because it also binds you, you can do that. It just gives you the inner strength. It gives you your mojo back. It gives you your objectivity back, because intrinsically each one of us has the ability to sort of deal with every situation that happens in our lives, right? But it's in these times of crisis, that objectivity is a little bit, it's temporarily suspended. So when you talk to someone, you get that objectivity back. You're the one at the steering wheel. You go ahead and go seek that help so that you get that mojo back. I'm also told many times by people, I don't have the time, I don't have the time for self-care and talking to someone, and there's a lot of stigma around seeking help, especially professionally, because it's a sign of weakness. But actually, as you would have known by now, it's a sign of courage. If you want to learn more about vulnerability, look at some of the videos that Brené Brown talks about, and how, being vulnerable is actually a strength. It's actually a sign of courage. And it actually helps you deal with that situation. And my favorite analogy here is, it's like, you guys are driving. You are on the steering wheel. You have the best possible vehicle with the best horsepower, brand new, everything done, sleekest of engines, all airbags, goes at a top speed. You also have a perfect GPS. You know exactly where you want to go. And the roads are brilliant. There's no traffic. It's smooth. You're just going, you're driving, and you have 100 more kilometers to cover. However, your fuel meter shows E. Yeah, the needle is on E. And the best of cars, with the best of knowledge, with the best of roads, will not take you 100 kilometers. And just as you're driving on the side, you see, a gas station. But you're sort of saying, I don't have the time for going to this gas station because I have to reach my target. You know the rest of the story. You know what's going to happen. So I'm just encouraging you to go to that little gas station, which is self-care or seeking help, whatever you require, and just fuel yourself so that you can be of help to yourself and the others. My next point of building resilience and hope is give hope to the others. Be of help to someone. You might think you're not professionals, but, guess what? You just don't need professionals all the time. For the most part, when someone can just listen to your story, it just helps you feel lighter and pretty much like a room that gets ventilated when you just open a little window. So you be that person, you be that first responder. When you see someone who's not looking themselves, just walk up and ask. Just check in on people. How are they doing? Listen, and just listen without interrupting, judging, moralizing, or advising. And have constructive conversations, because every person has some kind of a strength in them. If you've known, just wear the lens where you see a person and you say, what's the strength this person has? And just point that out. Be genuine about it. Don't just say for the heck of it, like you're a lovely person. I don't even know what that means. But if you're a genuine person, you really reach out, you're very helpful. I remember the time when I was struggling with this and you came to my rescue. I can never forget that. So that's very concrete. Okay. And make it about someone, because again, there's ample research that will show you that when you make it about someone else, something within you shifts. And all we are looking for at this time that will help us is that internal shift. That internal shift, because it's a change in perspective. And there's a beautiful quote I read. I don't know who said that, but it said, perspective, choose it or lose it. So you know what happens when you lose perspective. So choose it because you can. Because this is my most favorite slide. What is your story? It is about the perspective. The narratives you're putting out. What are you feeling at this moment? Are you feeling like a victim? Are you feeling that everything else has more control over you? Are you feeling like you cannot, you know, get through the situation? Guess what? This is what you're going to play it out. Not for any other reason, but because the subconscious part of your mind is very, very powerful. Our mind is like an iceberg. Yeah. And like an iceberg, 1/10 of it is visible and conscious. And if I were to give you an example of conscious, it would be the here and now. The fact that you can see what you can see on the screen, the fact you can hear my voice. Maybe you can hear your air conditioners or some birds chirping or the fan whirring or maybe some other background sound. What can you see? The colors. What can you feel? Your breath. That is the here and now. That's the conscious. Everything else falls in the realm of subconscious and unconscious. If I were to give you an example of subconscious, if I asked you, what did you have for breakfast this morning? This is considering that you don't have the same breakfast every day. You'll probably take a couple seconds and then say, I had cornflakes, or whatever, right? That's subconscious, the top layer of subconscious. If I asked you what did you do last week at this time? Unless there's a very regimented kind of life, it will take you some time to recall. So that's like going down the layers of subconscious, okay? And unconscious is that repressed stuff that is very painful to us that we push down so that we can carry on. So a lot of the stuff of your trauma lies in the unconscious part. Why am I sharing that with you? Because our stories come from the subconscious part, which works on the GIGO principle, garbage in, garbage out. So good in and good out. So if you have stories of only how I was wronged all the time, so just, explore your narratives. What is your story? Because your story is not something that other people are writing. Story is what you are putting out. I know you're going to jump and say, but other things have happened to me which are making me feel a certain way. Of course. But there's always a choice. You always have a choice of feeling differently. Or remember that thought, feeling, action cycle of acting differently. Yeah. So you know the story about lemons and lemonade, right? So it is about lemons and everybody gets their share of lemons. Yeah. And I was very happily quoting lemons to lemonade and somebody said, why not tequila? And I said, yeah, well, that's a good twist to it. That's a great perspective. Well, tequila it is. So it is, what is your story? Is your story that of being a victim of circumstances, of blaming? Or is your story of taking responsibility and saying, how can I get control back? Because when you express some kind of a blame, you are giving a lot of power to the external world to frame your story. Okay? Whereas what happened in your childhood cannot just be erased. Yeah? Cannot just be taken away. But what you do out of it is very much in your control. So it would be unfair to talk about a story without a story. So I'll give you a very short one. But I'm also going to ask Shiv and Rachna, how am I doing on time? Am I okay? Can I take like a couple more minutes?
You can take as much time as you want.
Yep. Sure. Thank you so much for that. Thanks. Now, I also have, because of how passionately I feel, I do lose track of time, which is something that, I need to work on. But anyways, so coming to the story, this is a story, but it's a real life situation that's happened. So there was a study that was done on twins. And it was a longitudinal kind of study, and they sort of found out the father and so on and so forth. So these twins were identical twins, and usually, it is said that identical twins usually have very identical kind of life stories and patterns and so on and so forth. Recently, there was something in the newspaper also, which was very heartbreaking, where these 24-year-old twins did everything together. They were both engineers. They both worked in the same spaces and so on and so forth, and they both died within hours of each other. They both fell sick at the same time. So there is a kind of that genetic sharing that twins have, which is extraordinary. So the story of twins, they just sort of did a longitudinal research and found that these twins were they were identical, but diametrically opposite in the way they came across. One was supremely successful, had a great family life, was very connected to the family. And the other one was diametrically the opposite, was completely what we call a loser, alcoholic. The family didn't want to live with them, wasn't able to hold on to a job. And they were both interviewed saying, oh, you're in this life situation. How come? So the one who was a loser, let's say, and I don't mean loser, but I just to sort of put a word to it. So said, so he was asked, how come you're in this state? Like, what happened in your life that's in this state? And he said, well, what can I do? Blame it on my father, because he was an alcoholic. He never took care of us. And yeah, so I just grew up like that. I don't know any other way but to be this. And they said, oh, okay, yeah, makes sense, early years, whatever you do. So they went to the other twin and asked him, you're so successful, you have a great family life, you have a great work-life balance, and you're a great spouse and a great parent. How come you're achieving this? Like, how come? And he said, this is all thanks to my father. So they said, well, okay, how come it's thanks to your father? Your father was an alcoholic, he didn't hold on to a job. So this man said, yeah, exactly, because I knew what I don't have to do or be in my life. So the benchmark was the father. And the way they crafted their stories were two very different stories. So please do reflect. Give yourself that time. Just stare into space, even if it's 5 minutes a day. It will actually give you what your story is. And journaling is a very, very powerful tool. If I can leave you with a tool, I would just say, every morning, before you just put your feet on the ground, just pick up a pen and keep a little diary next to you. Just journal, just write whatever words are coming to your mind. Do not allow yourself to think. Don't lift your pen. Just keep writing, and just do that. Do a page a day, okay? But the condition is that take a spiral journal so that you can turn and write and you don't read the previous day's page, okay? Because the eye gets tempted to do that. Huh? And there's a reason why I'm saying that, because early in the morning when you just get up, your subconscious mind is very powerful. You may have noticed that when you get up in the morning, you remember the dream and suddenly, it's gone. So before you check your phone, before you do anything, just do this little exercise. And if you can't do every day, no problem. Just do it as often as you can. I don't believe in shackling anyone, so don't get shackled on that, but just do it as often as you can. Yeah? And you will start seeing that your story is building. And another beautiful contribution to your story can be, everybody talks about the attitude of gratitude. And let me tell you when to do it. Do it first thing in the morning. Again, before you put your feet on the Mother Earth, just take a few seconds in your head to express that gratitude. I'm saying gratitude not from the space of religiosity or spirituality. Great if it is, but I'm not here. I'm here to respect all aspects. I'm saying thank whoever you want to. The universe, your particular deity or God, your guru that you may follow, anyone. But just make sure that you express that gratitude, because guess why? Your subconscious is very powerful. Your neural connections are being fired. And there's a very beautiful law called the Hebb's law, which says neurons that fire together, wire together. Yeah. So you wire yourself with the kind of positivity, because when the subconscious mind, what it does is that whatever you put in it, it just goes and looks for it during the day. You may have heard, I used to hear this and I used to really laugh. As a kid, I never understood what that is. कि अगर घर से खाना खा के जाओगे तो बाहर भी मिलेगा, अगर घर से भूखे पेट जाओगे तो बाहर भी खाना नहीं मिलेगा. Now, this is a very powerful concept psychologically. Okay? It's basically what you're feeding in the subconscious mind. And this is how narratives of culture are also, made. Yeah? So you might be seeing that a particular kind of community which believes in seva and service is also now being talked about a lot. You know what that is? That's the cultural narrative. For example, the narrative of langar, right? Everybody will talk about langar. Everybody will know, come what may, this particular community will jump and do langars. And do you think that Nanak, when he started this whole culture of langar, would have thought that oxygen langar will also happen? But that's the beauty. The narrative goes on. So that narrative that we have. And we have these from our stories. You don't have to go any further. You know, your mother, your grandmother, grandfather, somebody would have, given you some stories. Just reflect. And those values are the values that need to come to work as well. So that story, that narrative has to change. And the narratives, now organizational behavior is studying narratives of the organizations. Because every organization has a story. Please figure out what is the story of your organization. What is important. Just visit that space again and the meaning will change for you. And align the organization's story with your own story, because the reason why you're in this organization is because somewhere your story resonates with the story of the organization, which goes beyond putting food on the table. Also, most of you would be in the life stage where you're looking at that space of self-actualization, of the larger purpose. Why am I here? What is my story? What are people going to say about me? What do I want people to say about me? Yeah. And if you feel that you don't like the story that's gone on so far, guess what? Human beings are capable of restoring that story. Okay? Because neuroplasticity has taught us that you can restore the story by changing the behavior. And in as little as 21 days, your behavior can change. Don't ask me why 21, but there is some research around it which says that in that much time, the neural connections get made. Yeah. And culturally, isn't it interesting? I know in my culture, there's a lot about 21 days, 41 days, huh? So there has something to do with the behavior change. And if actually, you get up at a certain time with an alarm, 3 weeks later, you will not need the alarm. Your body clock will wake you up at that exact minute. Yeah. So go ahead and restory the story if you need to, or build the story even more, make it richer. Whatever your story is can be richer than there it is. And what will it do? It will restore faith, hope, resilience, and the desire to carry on. So going forward, we really need a larger, a more global conversation, which is inclusive, which takes care of the last person on the floor, which uses the language of empathy, hope, trust, resilience. How do we do that? And why do we do that? We do these when we anchor in purpose. The purpose of this conversation is common. It's not lamenting. It's about not just sort of saying, oh yeah, the organization doesn't help, or the world is terrible, or whatever. It will probably, that kind of vent might help you for a minute, but for the most part, it will leave you more miserable than ever. But if you anchor in purpose, what is my purpose? And then the collective interdependence comes, the connectedness comes, we become the source of support for each other. So look at progress, not victory. Don't look at the amount of output, but just look at, are you productive? And productive has to be a broad-based term. Yeah. And it has to be with something which takes care of, and being productive will include everything. Do I have a boundary? Do I have some ritual? Do I have routine? Am I reaching out? Am I checking in? And the first thing is, am I checking in with myself every morning? How am I feeling? I've created something called a moodometer. Huh? What's my mood like today on a 0 to 10? Huh? And then what will make it go? If it's 5, what's that one little thing that I can do to make it go to 6? Only 6. And from 5 to 6 will make you feel better. You might say, I'm not feeling a 9.5, but I'm not feeling 5 either. So I'm on a 6. So it's just that attitude that you keep cultivating. And again, once again, I'm warning you of the toxic positivity. There are people who tell me, things bothering me. I'm totally fine. There is what? I don't know why. Ye to hai, sab chalta hai. We have to go beyond that. I always say, probably not aware. You're probably not aware. You're probably in denial. But, great if that's how you feel. I'm not going to knock this out of you. But it would be a lot more different and a more richer world for you if you were to acknowledge your emotion. So be kind, for everyone you meet is carrying a great burden. And I'm just going to stop here and say thank you so much for your very, very kind attention. And I'm very open to any kind of suggestions you have, questions you have, any kind of interaction. Thank you very much.
Arvinder, thank you so much. That was, well, insightful is a word that comes to me, honestly. Lots. I was furiously making notes while you were talking. I've got a whole bunch of questions. I want to try and address as many of them as I can. So, you talked about this thing about seeking help and talking, to someone. So on the other side, when someone said that I'm a good listener, people confide in me, my friends, family, colleagues, etc. there. And earlier I could, hear out people and move on. I just can't seem to do that now. And a related question someone else asked is about saying that how do you listen to people when you're so overwhelmed yourself? So just any tips?
Sure. So thank you for asking that question, very pertinent. If you are feeling overwhelmed, if you are feeling like you're not fully there because like each one of us are carrying a burden, and some days the burden is heavier than the other days, okay? You take time out for yourself. You actually nurture yourself. You nourish yourself. You allow yourself, because I know grief is very predominant right now. If you are grieving, give yourself that time to grieve. Just that little time where you can think about grief for that person, things that you couldn't say or do. What would you like to say? Cry if you feel like. Talk to another person, because your vessel needs to be full before you actually start serving another person. Yeah, there is this beautiful saying that you can't serve from an empty vessel. So please do fill your vessel. It's the most normal thing to happen in this most abnormal time, to feel like I can't do it now. And don't worry, if you're a good listener, you have that in you. This is just a very temporary phase. So even if you take a day off or a couple days off, I would actually suggest build a self-care routine, because self-care should not be something that's a go-to when you're feeling overwhelmed, but it should be a very integral part of your life, so that it's not something that you have to sort of create time for when things are not going well. So that self-care time, which could be journaling, which could be talking to someone, which could be listening to some music, creating music, just letting your thoughts come and go, meditating, relaxing, whatever it is, that will recharge your batteries. Because if you're a listener, the world needs you. But again, you need yourself as well. So take good care of yourself and replenish that energy.
Thanks, Arvinder. There's another question about survivor's guilt. And it's really about any advice on just this feeling of helplessness, when you try to help people, but you can't, any tips around that?
Grief and grieving is very, very important. And nothing could be more relevant now than ever. I can say with utmost certainty, and I'm not happy saying this, but I know that each one of you over here, how many are you? You're like over 200 people here. Each one of you has a story of someone dying of COVID or complications. Each one of you. And I'm just being modest and saying one story. I'm sure you have many stories. Grief, each one of us is grieving. And I think people who survive, what I could have done, family members, because there are many stories that are pouring in about, thoda late ho gaya, I wish I had known. I wish I had done something earlier. I wish I had kept that oxygen cylinder, concentrator, things that we never knew existed. I wish I was better connected. I wish I was not in this country. All of this will keep coming as a part of the guilt. Grief goes through these natural stages. Some of you may be aware of it. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about it in the most simple way. On how initially there's denial. Many of you may be shocked, numb, maybe you don't respond, there's nothing happening, and you wonder what's happening. You may totally be in denial of the situation because you're so gripped with fear, perhaps. The next stage is anger. You're very angry. You're angry at the system. You're angry at the people around. You're angry at the person who's been careless. Recently, I lost a friend of mine, and she was someone who just thought Corona wasn't going to happen to her. And her son, I had to attend the prayer meeting virtually, of course, and the son said that, Mom, I'm very angry with you for being so careless and leaving me. And my heart went out to this youngster, And he said, I also know that you led your life your way, but at this point, I'm very angry with you, right? So the anger also comes in at the person who did not take care of themselves. So there's a lot of anger at different levels. And then comes this bargaining also, bargaining in which you say, if only I could have, I wish I could. Or sometimes the bargaining is with God. God, please, 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 please. Just this time save him. I will do this. I will never do this. I will never be angry. I will never fight. So we do that bargaining. That also doesn't work. Then we go into a sadness, depression kind of a space. Yeah. And then we just feel down and out and no energy. And slowly we move into the space of acceptance, where the acceptance is not that, oh, it's okay that it's happened, but the acceptance is now I am learning to live without this person. Now I accept the fact that in my day-to-day, this person will not be there. So grieving is all of this. So if people who are feeling guilty, guilt is a very important part of this process of, grieving, because this is where, some amount of that bargaining, some amount of anger itself will come, some amount of what could I have done. So talk to someone, because there is no quick fix like that to guilt. Do know that there is so much that is going on with so many of us, and that you did whatever you could or you couldn't, because at that time, cut yourself some slack, because you're also going through many emotions and you may not have been able to be so fully available, as you could have. And going forward, talk to someone, deal with that emotion, and don't try and fast forward it. It doesn't happen like that. Do some bit of self-care that you can. Talk to someone, self-care, journal, and just see what is it that you could do and what is it that you would have wanted to do, or you could, for someone else who's there, who could work with that kind of compassion from you.
I think connected to that, couple of questions about saying, I'm doing some of these things. I've got my routine going, but just continuous flow of, bad news and loss, we're getting literally every few hours. I just, I lose track. I'm not able to keep it. And then I get spurts of anxiety, coming in. Any, why does this happen? Is there any tips around how we can manage that?
Oh, yes, wonderful. Anxiety is actually on an all-time high. So I say wonderful to the question that because you gave me the tip, I forgot to pick this in my talk. So my wonderful is for that, for asking that question. So anxiety, like I said, we are on a spectrum, but for some of us, anxiety has moved from stress to distress. So there is a continuum that we are on. Anxiety, so we are able to manage, talk to someone, go for a walk, meditate, we're able to manage. If you're not able to manage with this, and it's been over 2 weeks or so, and it's still continuing to impact your sleep, your eating patterns, your routine, you're not able to concentrate on work, you moved into the distress. So distress means you need a professional help. And if you don't, sometimes we ignore that also, that distress also we ignore. If you ignore the distress, you move into crisis. So anxiety will move into panic attack. And a panic attack will feel something like a heart attack. It'll feel like you're dying, you can't help it. So if someone around you is anxious, so I'm going to work on both ways. You're anxious and someone around you is super anxious, moving into the panic space. When you're dealing with an anxious person, you try and stay calm, because your anxiety can fuel the other person's anxiety. And if you're the person who's feeling anxious, the first thing is just move into a different physical space. It's amazing what that can do. So if you're in your bedroom, just move outside, move into the kitchen, move into something totally different space if you can. If you can step out, that's great, because it's just that change of physical space sometimes helps the thoughts to, sort of calm. And where is anxiety coming from? It's coming from the thought space. So what do? There's a process called, it's very simple, it's called thought stopping. You will notice that anxiety builds up when you're thinking in a loop. It goes on and on and on, non-stopping. Non-stop. And you'll sometimes it's quite funny that the thought you start with and the thought you end with in like a minute or less It's like you started with the color blue and you went somewhere else, totally unrelated. And you try and find the connection and you say, whoa. So that's the power of the brain, that it can conjure so many thoughts at the same time and so fast. So what you can do when these thoughts are anxiety provoking and in a loop, what we call thought stopping, which means literally tell yourself stop, okay? Or say cancel. If that thought is not serving you, say cancel or stop. Move into a different space. Occupy your hands. So when you occupy your hands, it could be cooking, cleaning, organizing your desk, organizing your bookshelf, as I can see one needs organizing. Organize your cupboard. If your cupboard is organized, color-coded. Clean up, cook, work with the plants, work with the soil. Do any of the things that occupy your hands. If you don't want to do any, keep that beautiful, lovely yellow stress ball which has a smiley face and just squeeze it. If you don't have that, take a piece of old newspaper, tear it to bits. What it does is it expends your energy. And again, it's very scientific. So I'm not just saying mumbo jumbo, but it's scientific. What it does is it basically just takes your brain, it distracts your brain for that moment, and it helps you. Once that happens, there is another process. If you're too much in a loop, start journaling these anxious thoughts. Okay? On one side, just keep writing. Normally, with anxiety, we start catastrophizing. Nothing is going right for me. I'm stuck in this home. I'm stuck for a lifetime. A lot of the time at Ashoka, students would tell me, I'm stuck with my parents, right? I'm sure, the whole fun of the first year being with the spouse and everybody doing things together, I'm pretty sure it's worn out by now. Mine has for sure. But so once that happens, what we start doing is we start getting into these different kind of spaces. So what we can do is maintain a journal. When the anxiety goes high, just maintain that thought. You'll find that your thought actually is pretty catastrophic sometimes. So normalize it. Let me take that same example. I'm stuck at home, or I'm stuck with my parents, or I'm stuck with my spouse. Make it to safe. Change the word from stuck to safe. See how it changes, because that's also true. You're safe at home. In this day and time, the safest space is your home. Yeah. Well, it also involves being stuck with your spouse or your parent, but you're safe. So if you don't catastrophize, the anxiety becomes lesser. Another thing is you will find that when you put that anxious thought on paper, you will actually see that it's actually cognitively quite dissonant. It's not true. It's not completely true. And also observe when you're blaming me, you never help me. You're always blaming me. So you'll find that when you start using slightly saner kind of terms, which are not so absolute or so catastrophic, you'll find that your space, that your anxiety goes less. Oh, welcome Deepika's little baby. Yeah. So the anxiety comes less. So journal it, write it, use your hands, talk to someone, jump dance, help someone else, organize your life, your anxiety will come down. The situation does not change. The perspective does. So the moment you change your perspective, it becomes less anxiety provoking. Let me give you another example. So if I had to, break this, this is anxiety, right? This is anxiety, and I have to make it go away. Can't make it go away without breaking it or nothing. We're not supposed to do any. So how can I make this anxiety irrelevant or small? One simple way would be, because I can't change it. Did this become small for you now? Okay, this is what perspective is about. Put something so big in front of it that this becomes small. So with anxiety, just start doing so many other things that the intensity of the anxiety becomes manageable. That it will go away like that? No. Don't even try. And then the other question, I know people say, I do it, but then it comes back. Yes, of course it will come back, but it won't bother you so much if you know that, I know what to do when I feel anxious. See, for a headache, you don't feel so scared. You know that, I have a headache, I'm going to pop a pill and I'm going to be fine. So for anxiety, we just need to do that. We need to know what to do before it gets into the panic space. But if you do something of self-care every day, your anxiety will be taken care of. Okay? It will stay in the level where it's actually productive and not unproductive. So you stay in flow. You don't freeze. You know, the brain's response, fight, flight, freeze. You know, when there is a conflict situation, the positive space to be in is flow. So flow comes when you acknowledge that anxiety. Remember what I said, acknowledge, accept, and then act. Acknowledge I'm anxious, then don't judge yourself. And a sweet little exercise that you can do, very, very powerful, when you're feeling down and out, just acknowledge that feeling and use exactly these words and do the gesture that I'm doing. So even though I'm feeling scared and anxious, I love and accept myself. Yeah? Many people might not even know, oh, I didn't know I was so narrow-shouldered, broad-shouldered or something, because you've never hugged yourself. So self-love is this. You start like that. You give yourself a nice tight hug, you know, because you deserve it. Yeah? You're around, you're surviving, you're here, you're working, you deserve a hug. First from yourself and then the world gives you. But use exactly these words. Even though I feel, fill in the blank, I love and accept myself. Love and accept. Those are crucial. Yeah?
Great.
This would be
fantastic. You know, Arvinder, we're in a client services business, right? So while, you know, we could say that we are trying to be as empathetic as we can as a company, but, you know, this is a 24/7 job, and not all clients are always understanding. Many have been, but, you know, we do have the occasional toxicity with, you know, toxicity. I don't know what the word is, but anyway,
toxicity. Yeah.
Okay. With clients, just any suggestions on how to deal with such clients, given that, you know, we also have to earn our bread, but, you know, just how do we manage such situations?
Yeah. So, phenomenal question. Whoever's asked, thank you for asking that. You know, one of the things is because when someone else is putting their own stress onto you, it becomes toxic, right? And yes, it's the need of the hour sometimes. If, like I said, we all have, there's some amount of anxiety, like 1 late night, 2 late nights at a row, you know, but then if it's 7 late nights or all-nighters, you know, in a row, of course, you won't be able to be your best. So look at what your client is actually projecting. They are only projecting their own anxiety onto you. So if you're someone, but this needs a bit of training, This needs a bit of training. If you pick up that emotion in the other person and reflect and say, I completely see how pressed you are for this information. I totally see the space that you come from, and I know that you have a huge pressure on you to find, since you're into recruiting, to close this position. The moment you've acknowledged where they are coming from, then state what you're doing and say, I'm trying all of this and I would need X amount of time for me to give you my best and find this for you. So when you actually picked up the emotional need of the client, matched with what you want, what you can deliver and when, and then, you know, sort of pick it up. Because at this point, the whole world is looking just for that. You know, just that compassion, just that listening. And however, and also, you know, this whole relational skill that what this question is about, relational skill. This has to be at the heart of industry now. We can now, the chain narrative that I'm talking about, this is the chain narrative. We just have to talk this beyond. It has to go beyond the realms of, you know, your performance. It just has to have, just as your performance has to be taken into account during the appraisal, so has the language of empathy, of trust, of love. And whoever is your client, empathy is not just for ourselves and our people. It's for anyone who's approaching us. Speak that language, because they are pressurizing you, because they have that pressure. They're only displacing that on you. So you can either pick it or not. So if you don't pick it and speak the language of empathy, they might actually want to talk to you more often because they feel understood by you. And then you also will want to do your best. Somebody who's really screaming and biting your head off, you also don't want to do anything for them. Your best never comes out.
I think some of our guys will be happy to sponsor you for a session with their clients on this point. But okay, there's other questions around sleep, and right. So I've got very disturbed sleep. I keep waking up. I keep checking on my kids, on my parents. Even a small squeak from my child, I start. My heartbeat starts becoming faster. I'm having crazy dreams, etc., etc. All of that. So just any tips
on sleep?
Yeah.
Great. So just like anxiety, sleep is also eluding everyone. Most people that I know are not having great sleep. Okay. So I say that right in the beginning so that you know that it's the most normal reaction, that this kind of hypervigilance is a reaction of trauma. A lot of people are also going through the post-traumatic stress disorder. And they're reliving the trauma, something that they may not even remember. They may have gone through their childhood, but they're reliving those traumas simply because the situation is such and it's acted as a trigger for you. So what can you do when you're going through all of this? Something called the sleep hygiene, which is simple things which you already probably know. Make sure that you have like a ritual around sleep. Okay. Most of us have. We brush our teeth, we change into our pajamas, we probably put some moisturizer on our face, we probably, whatever, have a hot cup of chocolate or milk or haldi wala doodh or whatever you have, you have that little ritual around that. Everybody has told you, but I don't think any one of us, me included, listen, don't look at that damn phone just before you're sleeping, right? Try that. So I cannot say that I do it 100% of the time, but what I've done is I've sort of created a system that I don't look at, this horrible news, because I know when one condolence message comes, then I know 100 more will come in the group. So I don't look at it, okay, because this is self-preservation. So whatever is your sleep time, so have some rituals around that. Eat on time. If you're watching something on Netflix, do something which which calms you, which doesn't agitate your brain. See, normally you could handle that, but these, as I said, these are extraordinary times. These are not normal times. So don't just imagine that the pandemic is over. So if I act normal, it will be normal. No, there's nothing normal about a pandemic. There's nothing normal or okay about people dying every day. So make sure that you have a sleep hygiene, which helps you. Secondly, also, just something called a self-affirmation. Just before you sleep, maybe your moms and dads taught you a little prayer for whatever it's worth. It just anchors you. It helps you feel I am safe. Okay. I know that when I was a little girl, my mother put a kada on me and she would say, oh, when you're feeling scared, this kada will protect you. We laughed at it or whatever, but psychologically extremely powerful because it anchored me. Anything that happened, it would anchor me. Okay. So that kada would anchor me that, oh, I'm safe, I'm protected. And then my mind would go into all resources that make me feel safe and protected. So the same way, have some affirmations, like be in the present. In the here and now, my children, my parents, and I are safe in this house. Okay? I have done everything that I could, to keep my family and myself safe. Gratitude is a great antidote for it. When you express gratitude, not just first thing in the morning, but also last thing in the night, that's what's going to play on your mind. So when you say, thank you for a lovely day that I had, and simple things, for my spouse next to me on the bed, my children on my side, my parents in the next bedroom, the roof over my head, the fact that I had a good meal, the fact that I have a job, the fact that my brain works, my body works, we're all healthy and safe. Look at it, the list goes on and on. So when you do that, then the stress levels go down. Because again, the brain is a very powerful kind of a computer and quite a dumb computer as well. It doesn't do anything on its own. It needs a lot of programming from you. So program it in a way that it serves you a good purpose. So program in a way where you say, okay, I'm safe, right? What can I do for my safety? I've done all of that. And gratitude. So all the things that are working in your life. It will make your stress levels come down. So your cortisol hormone that goes up with stress, that will come down. Okay. Your endorphins are kicking in. You feel gratitude has a great sense of peace and tranquility. Yeah. And then you can have some small little exercises like just focus on your breath, going in and coming out. And anytime you wake up in the middle of the night, it's all right. Don't get worried. The biggest enemy of sleep is when you worry about sleep. Don't worry. It's okay. Just keep lying down. If after about 20 minutes you're still not able to sleep, get up and do something very calm. Okay? If you hold a book in your hand, I guarantee you in 2 pages you'll fall asleep. Okay? Most of our brain is wired to textbooks. And you know what textbooks have done to us all our lives. Yeah. So in some way that also helps. I'm just being facetious. Don't take me literally on that. Yeah. So it's like, so that also helps you, but it does. Reading helps you fall asleep. But make sure you're not reading a very engrossing plot or something like that. No Agatha Christie's, please. Yeah. But anything that's calming. And slowly but surely your sleep will come back. And if you find that after 2 to 3 weeks of doing this, it's still eluding you, please seek professional help. Maybe there's something that you're grappling with, which is not helping you. Last but not the least, are you holding on to all the responsibilities of all the people? Remind yourself, you don't have to do it alone. Everybody can share the responsibilities and take care. When you talk about it, then you feel a lot calmer. If everybody shares and divides, then it's, remember, collective resilience. I want you to leave with that in your mind, collective resilience. Yeah, I can see some people are probably getting tired or something, so I'm
we'll maybe another.
I'm happy to talk, but I leave it to you.
No, I think anyone needs to jump off, will jump off, so no issues.
Okay, all right. So those who want to jump off, thank you so much. Yeah, but those who don't, thank you very much for staying with me, because I'm loving it.
There's a question, for some, some among us, we've lost parents, right? So there's one or two specific questions about how we can help our parent, the surviving parent, really deal with the loss of a partner. I mean, how can we be more, and yet be practical and keep moving on there. So just finding, maybe the person is struggling to find that balance. So any thoughts on that?
Rule number 1, when they're crying or grieving their partner, please don't stop them. Okay? Let them. Just hug them, hold them and say, I know how that feels. Okay? Because your parents, whoever's lost a partner, has lost a partner of many, many years. Okay? And so let them, allow them. Most of the time we say, mat ro. Aap roge, aap weak ho jaoge, to hum kya karenge? So stop saying that, but just understand their pain, hold them and say, I understand your pain. I know you're missing. It's natural to miss, dad or mom or whoever's gone, right? That's first. Once that is happening, alongside, anchor them in purpose. In my presentation, I've talked about anchoring in purpose. Anchor them in purpose. That purpose could be your children. That purpose could be you. Don't force them with the children on them, but just sort of say that, Mom, I was just wondering, I wanted to do this. What do you think about it? Even when you know the answer. So anchor them in purpose. Generally, if they have, if they're running the home, don't take it away from them. Don't say, acha nahi, ab main aap pe pressure nahi dalenge, main le. Don't do that. Let them run the home. So because, once you lose a companion, the sense of purpose goes away. You say, what's the point of me living? And also the guilt of the survivor. The survivor's guilt is very crippling. It is very crippling. So you allow the person to cry or, talk about it. Slowly you'll find, and also reminisce in a positive way. It used to be nice when daddy did this. So slowly that becomes a part of the narration. So people feel it's okay. I can talk. I'm allowed to talk. Parents are also holding themselves back saying, no, we don't want to upset our children. We should be brave. So knock that narrative off and say, just talk about whatever. Because you know what? When you talk, you get it out of your system. And then the intensity is much lesser. Even when someone's talking about suicide, though that's not so paramount right now, but even when they're doing, don't stop them. Let them talk.
Connected, parents to kids, right? So a lot of us have young kids, and while we still have options to hopefully talk to colleagues and friends and have a mature conversation with kids, obviously they're not meeting any friends, they're not comfortable getting on a Zoom call like this and chatting. Any tips? And I mean, I can speak for ourselves, we keep talking about what's going on and the kids are listening in. How do we manage kids in a time like this? And maybe, you can talk about two levels, sort of very young kids and then, teenager kind kids.
Yeah. So, with children, whether young or teenager, the one thing that's very important that I feel is that they're a great source of spontaneity. One of the things that is missing in our lives right now is spontaneous expression. You see, we're not going out to work, so we're not meeting our colleagues. There are no happenstances. There are no water cooler or smoke spaces, where we just chit chat, there's no space. We're not traveling. You know how it is, the fellow traveler will tell you everything about their lives, or you'll tell them you're never going to see them, they're never going to see you. But there's a kind of spontaneity about it. That spontaneity is missing out of our lives big time because everything is so virtual. So those of you who have little children, you're blessed because they give you the source of being spontaneous. What we do is, energy around us is so heavy that, we transmit that. So play with the children. Children are very resilient. For them, the anchor is you. So that anchor better be solid, and that solidity is about being spontaneous. So it's like nothing in the world will stop, that punch from coming. But if there is like a cushion there, so then when the punch comes, it's not that strong, right? So it's like your fun, your spontaneity is the cushion. So it's not like they won't get affected. It will happen if they've lost a grandparent, if some neighbor, if someone, or the fact that they're going out, they're not going out, they're not meeting friends. For many of them, the boundary between the virtual and real is so blurred. My little niece, who's 5 years old, sort of looked at she was in the class and there was some bird. She was saying, "Papa, is this real or is this a TV bird?" So it's like that's scary. That's like really blurring, So for them, what we need to do is, as much as possible, keep the spontaneity alive. Whether you can have, some kid who's safe and some play date, if you can do that. But we can't take away these spaces where we are talking about all of this. Try and not read too much or talk too much. And even if you're talking, it has to be what I call constructive conversations. So, and these conversations can be constructive when we just talk about things and we help them if they're scared of corona. Many children are scared of corona because parents have scared them simply because they said that's the only way they'll keep washing hands. Yeah, I know a little kid who's now continuously, repeatedly just washing hands for any little thing that happens. Now, my fear is that these are signs of, some kind of compulsive behavior. And for a 6-year-old, that's not okay. Refuses to walk on the road, saying, no, if my jeans touch, the ground, then it's going to get the coronavirus. So what we need to do is we need to temper the conversations. We don't need to scare them, but we need to apprise them and say, and yet within that, keep the spontaneous spaces going. Yeah. Your high schoolers will be very preoccupied with what college will I go to, this exam is not happening, or something or the other. Help them see the larger perspective. One of the things that I find very powerful is to know that we're not alone. This is universal. This is world over. Give them examples of how SAT scores are being dropped now from the top universities, how exams are not happening, because this is something which is pretty abnormal. So people's responses are going to happen. But knowing that whatever happens is not exclusively for you. Please understand, the person who's thinking says, my career jeopardized, my college application jeopardized, right? When you help them see that it's going to change for everyone, it's a little bit of a leveler. And have conversations. Don't shy away from having conversations. Limit the time. But mostly you are the role models. The way you deal with this whole situation in corona is the way your children will respond to it, no matter what their age. No matter
One of the things we did, Arvinder, is we actually, we had this little COVID warrior group, and we've got in now 40 teenager children who are helping us dial numbers and help out. And I think it's been, I don't know, we've not asked them how they feel about it, but I think also that feeling of them being involved and helping out, I think can be quite powerful. We've had 13-year-olds who managed to get oxygen cylinders for people. I mean, just, some great stories there.
Yeah. So one of the things about these adverse situations is, some very beautiful stories come from there. If you always see these kind of situations, no matter what, whenever it happens, you will always find some very beautiful stories. So those are stories of resilience. Those are stories of collective positive narratives. So those are the stories that we need to share even more. So thanks for sharing this. I'll sort of always remember to talk about it. That, when you get into, and when you're doing something which you can, it makes you feel less helpless.
Sure. Just conscious of time, Arvinder, one of the last questions, so, words we've been hearing are anxiety and depression. So one, we're trying to understand what is the difference, and really when, again, you talked about talk to someone, seek help there. At what stage do I need to start thinking about saying, hey, this is not something my friend / spouse / colleague can manage. I think I need professional help. I mean, is there a telltale sign?
Yeah. So, so one of the things when a person is stressed, we've all been through stress. So, the eating, sleeping will go haywire. Person looks a little preoccupied, not fully there, so you can tell, so we pick the nonverbal language pretty well. And we can tell that something's not quite there. So when it moves into the space where it needs professional help is if you see that it's been 2-3 weeks and this person is still feeling the same. And even when you've approached and tried to talk to them, they're still not really coming out with what's happening to them. So then you know that something has happened which needs to be addressed, where a professional help is required. Yeah. So that's the space when you start talking about, no, I really, and the thing is, I have been noticing that you're not the same, etc., whatever you notice. When they move into distress, you'll find things like, substance use abuse has increased or started for some, you never know. Poor concentration, maybe, talking about death and dying, philosophizing, a sense of hopelessness, like what's the point carrying on, or that whole feeling of languishing that I talked about, just, and it's going on, it's continuing. Now, it's neither depression nor is it anxiety. It's somewhere in the middle. It's anxiety we are all very aware of. It's there's a very visceral response to anxiety. Yeah. In depression, you'll find that a person is slowly, you'll find the performance has gone down. The person who used to take very good care of their appearances is not doing so. Coming very late to work if they are not the kind of people who did that. Preoccupied, getting very emotional, can't really control. People who are undergoing depression, clinical depression, for example. See, situational depression is very normal. So a lot of losses are happening. A lot of people will feel depressed, in grief. It's normal to feel that depression. But that depression we know is situational. There's a situation that's triggered. Sometimes people don't know, there's no apparent reason, but they may be going through a clinical depression. It could be because it runs in the family. It could be situation oriented, where there's a prolonged sense of, like the uncertainty that I talked about. Some people just lose hope and then they move slow, they slip into a depression. Yeah. And that when it's a chemical depression, you need help from a psychiatrist. You can't really deal with it on your own. You can't say, I'm going to get myself out of it. And if someone's depressed, please don't say it's all in your head. Just kick it out. Just shake it off. You can't shake depression off. You can't shake anxiety off. You have to do something about it. So,
are you seeing? Sorry, Arvinder, I'm jumping. Are you seeing a change in that taboo, at least in India, about going and seeking professional help for mental health issues? Are you seeing that beginning to change now?
See, big time. There's a big time change, because there's this whole people are now really seeing. They're acknowledging that the mental health is as important as physical health. We all always focus on nutrition and this and that. We never really focus on mental health. And mental health means, self-care. So people are doing yoga so that their bodies are fit, But do we also sort of see for my mental health, what am I doing? And you have to do very simple things, check in on someone, help someone, when you see someone, just smile, express gratitude to someone. Simple acts of kindness, sometimes some random acts of kindness are also very, very helpful, in just improving your mental health. And your mental health and well-being is like when you get out of the bed in the morning, you're looking forward to the day. Okay? Yeah, you're looking forward to the day. Not that I have to achieve so much, earn so much, etc. Looking forward to the day because you're going to meet your friends, you're going to work, you're going to have, fun with your children, you're going to have a healthy meal, you're going to watch a nice movie. Since, and by the by, let me just check in. So each one of you who's here, I kid you not, if you just make that one phone call, you will not just make someone else's day, you will make your own day. So someone who you wanted to check in or say hello to, but you haven't done because you're saying, oh my God, it's been so long. This is a great opportunity. If you want to say thank you to someone who was, they were there in your life at some point and they helped you, do that. Maybe as a company, you could have something like a gratitude day where everybody sends messages to everyone for whatever one nice thing that someone did. So that would be a great one, like a great way to sort of just make everybody feel valued. And that is the culture, that is the narrative that you can build. And you can only make someone feel valued when you value yourself. So value yourself, see your own strengths, and be confident in saying, I'm really good at it, Because then with equal aplomb, you'll be able to say, I suck at this. Yeah. So you won't feel bad about it. And your sense of self improves. So, yeah. I don't know. I think I digressed on that, but I suppose, yeah.
No, you're fine, Doc. I think this has been honestly fantastic. I'm just so glad we did this session. Great practical just tips and suggestions that at least I've made a bunch of notes on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
If anyone, I've been doing all the asking, but if anyone wants to say something, it doesn't have to be a question. If anyone wants to just say something or, just feel free to unmute and speak. Otherwise, we can wrap up. But
I would actually,
yes.
I would love to hear some, something, some experience, some things, or even a feedback, or what was this for you? What's the one takeaway? If each one of you can have just that one takeaway for yourself, that's good enough. One little thing that you need to change. And it has to be very small. Because if you make too many and too big, I tell you, won't happen. But make your notes, but one thing at a time for 1 week. If you just pick it up, that would be great. Very quick one words will also do.
Rhythm.
Rhythm. Okay.
Focus on action rather than thoughts and feelings.
Focus on action rather than thoughts and feelings. Yes. Yeah.
Self-care.
Want to stay in the second rather than thinking about the future.
Stay in the present moment.
And look at progress, not victory.
Look at progress, not victory. Okay.
Train the brain.
Frame the brain. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Gratitude. Positive affirmations.
Positive affirmations. Yes.
I say be kind and get help.
Yeah. Be kind and get help. Oh, that's a beautiful slogan. Be kind and get help. I love that.
I'd say one, don't suffer twice.
Don't suffer twice. Yes. 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 Thank you so much, everybody. I mean, my deepest gratitude to all of you, genuinely from the bottom of my heart. This has been absolutely, because each time I talk about it, so much gets reaffirmed for me. So even though it may